The Trudeau government is trying to take cancel culture and turn it into federal law. I'm Candice Malcolm, and this is The Candice Malcolm Show. Midnight madness. As Canadians slept, the Liberals, NDP, and Bloc combined to pass Bill C-10. That is how Canadian law professor and the country's foremost expert on law and technology, Dr. Michael Geist, described last Tuesday's shenanigans in the House of Commons that saw the Trudeau government ram through its controversial internet censorship bill. This comes after we saw the government limiting debate, overruling its own committee chair, and using every available procedural maneuver to get the bill passed in the House of Commons, Geist reports. In a nutshell, Bill C-10 attempts to take the government's outdated cultural regulatory mechanism, the CRTC, and awkwardly apply it onto the internet. This will give bureaucrats, and the political operatives who direct them, the power to meddle in the content that you see online. The bill seeks to regulate everything from Facebook to Netflix to Google, and potentially replace those companies' algorithms with the government-approved ones. This would allow the feds to push content they like and hide content they don't like. This should make all Canadians feel uneasy. The idea of liberal hacks in the Prime Minister's office getting to decide what you see and what you don't puts Canada in uncomfortably close proximity to totalitarian China. Even if you agree with the Liberals today, would you trust that power in the hands of Conservatives? Or how about the NDP? Given the power to control the information on the internet, should we ever trust a political party with this kind of power? Perhaps the most concerning element of Bill C-10 was an amendment that was removed by the Liberals that would have protected user-generated content. In other words, the Liberals want to regulate and control what you post on your private Facebook page or your private Twitter account. And it turns out that Bill C-10 was just the tip of the iceberg of the Trudeau government's plans to control what you see and what you say online. Speaking recently at the Banff World Media Festival, Heritage Minister Stephen Guilbeault hinted that the Liberals had something far worse coming. And this is a quote from Guilbeault. He says, "Now this is going to be controversial. People think that C-10 was controversial. Wait until we table this legislation," he said, doing his very best impression of a Bond villain. Well, lo and behold, less than 24 hours after the Liberals rammed through Bill C-10, Justice Minister David Lametti introduced Bill C-36, which is a bill to crack down on so-called hate propaganda, hate crimes, and hate speech online. Lametti tabled the last-minute bill on Wednesday, right before the House of Commons rose for the summer, which, among other things, will reintroduce hate speech provisions into the Canadian Human Rights Act. It will become illegal if this bill is passed to communicate in a way that, quote, is likely to foment detestation or vilification of an individual or a group. Now, when it comes to Bill C-36, I'm going to read from Matthew Lau's piece over in the National Post because he describes it very well. He says, quote, "Under the hate speech provisions, journalists, bloggers, and social media users, in fact, almost anyone who writes anything on the internet, would be liable if anyone complains that their speech is hateful, to be investigated by bureaucrats for committing human rights violations and forced to pay reparations." All reasonable people can agree, of course, that stirring up hatred against someone or some group of people is very bad. But unfortunately, these sorts of hate speech laws are rife with pitfalls. There is, first of all, the moral hazard problem. Similarly to how extravagant government welfare programs discourage people from earnestly searching for jobs, entitling people to financial reparations if they complain about hate speech creates the possibility that some people will originate complaints even when they are poorly founded, since the complainants do not face any downside financial risk. Now, I'll continue to read from Lau's piece in the National Post. He writes, "Perhaps to allay concerns about censorship, the government says that speech that expresses dislike or disdain, that discredits, humiliates, hurts, or offends, is not considered hate speech and so would not be illegal. But what is the difference between speech that expresses hatred and speech that merely expresses dislike? In a society governed by laws, people should be able to know whether something is lawful before they do it. With the proposed hate speech law, people instead will find out after the Canadian Human Rights Tribunal reaches its decision whether their speech was illegal or not. The process does not inspire confidence, especially since under Section 13 there were secret trials, and until one case in 2009, the tribunal's conviction rate over a period of 3 decades was 100%. So again, to Lau's point, what constitutes hate speech? What's the difference between speech that expresses dislike, disdain, that discredits, humiliates, hurts, or offend, which the government says is legal, versus hate speech, which the government says is illegal? Make no mistake, Bill C-36 will expand the government's power to crack down on messages and comments they don't like based on their own subjective and ill-defined criteria. First, Trudeau introduced an internet censorship bill to give the feds regulatory power over the internet. Now, with this bill, they want to criminalize opinions they don't like. Perhaps worst of all is the mechanism that could be used to pull down content the government doesn't like. Bill C-36 gives the Canadian Human Rights Commission the power to compel citizens to cease online communication or pay a monetary fine. Compelling Canadians to remove content under threat of fine or worse is only part of what the Trudeau government has already told us is their ultimate goal. After Trudeau won a minority election in 2019, his mandate letter written to Heritage Minister Stephen Guilbeault laid out his top priorities in government. In that letter, Trudeau ordered the government to, quote, create new regulations for social media platforms, starting with a requirement that all platforms remove illegal content, including hate speech, within 24 hours or face significant penalties, unquote. Removing content the Liberals don't like, and in 24 hours no less, erases any possibility for due process or appeal. It allows the government to play judge and jury and to compel technology companies to do their dirty work. Make no mistake, these are censorship laws, and censorship laws have no place in a free and open society. I'm Candice Malcolm, and this is The Candice Malcolm Show.